Hi, my name is Dave Reski, CEO of Now Speed Marketing, and welcome to this edition of Marketing in the Now, where we talk about the best ideas of marketing. And my guest today is Dan Stradtman, the CMO of Bloomfire, an AI-powered knowledge management software platform. Prior to Bloomfire, Dan led insights teams at Amazon, GE, and Walmart. Dan, welcome to the show.
David, thank you. Always a pleasure to connect. So appreciate you having me on.
You have worked for some amazing companies, and now you're doing some exciting work at Bloomfire, and I'm excited about diving into that. You've had some powerful experience around advertising and content marketing, and I think we're gonna have a great conversation about that. You and I were talking about content marketing and the power of that, and I'm interested in diving into your experience about transitioning from a heavy ad-focused marketing program into really a deep content marketing program that's really working and driving pipeline. Tell me about, where that came from and what you experienced maybe when you first joined Bluefire.
Yeah, thanks, David. When I had the pleasure to join about 2.5, 3 years ago, Blue Fire was in a position where had a really good, strong brand in different places, but had rotated into kind of heavy advertising spend, right? Google ads, not really as much in LinkedIn, but and what we were finding was it can generate a lot of activity. We're generating leads, MQLs, but the conversion rate was really poor, kind of moving from MQL into interested and even interested deeper into the funnel where it actually turned into revenue. And so part of the analysis we did when we came on was, let's look at what folks are doing through the buyer's journey. Let's look at the kind of type of assets they need to be successful and develop content around those things. And so we really did start kind of with the data to try to understand as much as we could. And some of that was easy to come across. Some of it was quite difficult, as you might imagine. And by doing that, we recognized, look, the ultimate thing we need to do here is deliver that value to the buyer, right? Or the person who's doing the evaluation, to bring them along in the journey and then have them, be confident enough to say Bloomfire is a brand that we want to consider. The other learning for us was people that ask for Bloomfire by name, we tend to be more successful with. And so we needed to really elevate the brand and bring that to folks in different ways. And, advertising kind of hits you in the moment, but it's that kind of drip type of content, that's available no matter what you're looking for along the buyer's journey, that I think was really effective. And so, by doing that, we, really put a lot of thought into how we were going to rework the brand. We did kind of a holistic relaunch of the brand in the fall of 23 with the intent of, look, we're going to be the leader in this space and we're going to be trusted for knowledge in this space. And folks, are going to recognize us for that and come to the site and ask for help when they're ready and be a more qualified lead.
I'm intrigued by your experience with blending content strategy and the brand strategy. Do you think that those two always should go hand in hand? I mean, if you're really revising your whole content strategy, is it necessary to rethink your brand? Or, yeah, vice versa. If you're doing a brand
Yeah.
strategy, do you kind of have to rethink your content strategy at the same time?
Well, I mean, for us, it came back to, what is our purpose, right? And I think what we recognized was, as a company, we felt like we were being more successful and had the opportunity to be more successful with larger enterprise clients. I mean, we're lucky enough to work with 40 odd of the Fortune 500, right? And, that's where we kind of stake out our future success. And so in doing that, we recognize that the brand, while known, needed to evolve a bit. If you're going to work with those types of companies, you need a brand and a presence that is indicative of those companies having trust in you as a partner. And so that really did drive our brand strategy to say, how do we elevate the brand and how do we elevate the messaging to be able to really hit on the things that are important to those types of companies. And so by natural evolution, the content is going to flow from that kind of re-skinning of the brand, right? It wasn't a 90-degree turn or even a 45-degree turn. I think it was a relatively gentle turn, just with adding to the level of kind of fit and finish to the brand in a way that it had never had, and then being able to say, all right, the content needs to flow from that.
Yeah. And that
Go ahead.
ma-
Sorry.
that makes a lot of sense. And did you find as you were trying to tell that story to the enterprise clients that you needed to produce a lot more content? Was it the volume that went up, or was it the structure? How did you kind of
Yeah,
think about the content
it's a really
strategy?
interesting question. So structure certainly and volume, I think, had to go up, maybe for different reasons though. So part of it is, when you start to get to that point, you say, all right, we need to reach these customers. It's what is the most effective channel to do that,
Hmm.
right? And so depending on that channel is going to help drive kind of both the structure and the frequency of that content. So, we recognized that some of the traditional ways of content distribution didn't seem to be resonating, like the content syndication of old. We tried those things, it really wasn't working, right? Even trying to push content out there almost from like an SDR perspective, right? How do we get our name out there? How do we try to call on folks? That wasn't breaking through. What was breaking through was showing up in the places where decision makers at these companies are, right? So in larger publications, in SEO, and those elements. And so we needed to shape the content to be able to be really successful for those types of things. And we continue to evolve those strategies. And then we also kind of pinned a lot on this idea of like, what is your hero content, right? Which is not an uncommon type of thing, but there's going to be these big pieces that are either informational, in essence, to drive folks to be thinking about the problems they have maybe at their company differently, or commercial, where it's about how do we elevate that brand of Bloomfire to really hit on those points of the business problems.
Yeah, so you're talking about a major evolution in thinking about content to reach all the buyers across the buying process for all products. And you're talking about different types of content, hero content, maybe deeper pieces, probably also blog content.
Mhm.
And if you think about like maybe a smaller company, maybe a smaller tech company that's producing a couple of blogs a month and maybe a video every quarter and maybe a white paper a couple times a year. This feels like an exponential reach, right, in content. Do companies need to be thinking kind of much deeper about content and content production in order to get to a level of addressing all of the buyer's needs across the whole buying cycle and all the formats and all the channels?
Well, it's we have some of those same things. I'd love to tell you I have absolute unlimited resources to do some of these things. I don't, right? So we do have to be creative. Yeah, short answer is yes, but ultimately you need to have a strategy that says what you're going to prioritize, right?
Hmm.
And so what the engine we built here was heavily built on, or is heavily built on, making sure that our brand resonates, right? Making sure we have the right content. And for the most part, inbound leads. And so, to do that, you need to be really tuned into SEO, and now the AI SEO, AIO, whatever the moniker is that people prefer to use. There's a few that they're throwing out there. Really hone in on that. Really hone in on your channel strategy, right, to reach those folks. Like for example, we had put a lot of work into one of our hero content pieces where we interviewed 10,000 plus of our user base to get some really great information around the value of knowledge, to be able to quantify that knowledge. For us, the right way to launch that in it was to talk about the value of what we're bringing, which we you know, the moniker we use is enterprise intelligence, which is this coming together of knowledge management and enterprise tools and AI and business intelligence. We felt like to reach folks in this way, we have this very quantitative bit of content. It needs to show up in HBR, and so we worked with HBR to create the right piece for that, and that's the channel we chose, and that's the eyeballs that we wanted to get, and it was successful in driving people to engage. So, again, the strategy is really driving where I prioritize. Blog posts are really important. You're going to need content in a different way to feed into AI SEO versus kind of traditional SEO. You're going to need to know what the queries are that people are asking in the new search engines like, Perplexity, ChatGPT, because there's zero click answers being provided by Google in them and those now. So, it feels, if it feels overwhelming, it's a little bit because it is, but you have to say, all right, here's the strategy I'm going to develop, and I have to believe in it, and then I have to stick to it.
Yeah, it's a complex world out there. Let's talk a little bit more about that AI SEO strategy, or we call it GEO, generative engine
Mm-hmm.
optimization. Um, and I just did an exercise yesterday where I tried to figure out like what are all the questions my buyers are asking about GEO agencies, this is an example, across the buying cycle for like three different buyer types: user buyer, technical buyer, and a financial buyer. So just as a model. And I worked and I created a basically like 90 questions, like 10
Mm-hmm.
questions in each of these cells, right? Three buying cycles, three buyer types. And so these are 90 potential pieces of content that I could produce to answer these questions. And my theory is like if I answer these questions well on my website, that'll be training the AI to answer these questions for me and serve SEO and serve the needs of my buyers who want
Yep.
to get answers to these questions, right, legitimately. Is that a legit approach or is that overkill creating 90 articles answering
No,
really a one
well,
service offering, right?
it's a great question, David. So I would say that the exercise of figuring out the 90 questions is actually not overkill. And it's something we've done here, right? And we've had to do it across a variety of use cases, a variety of ICPs, right? So it almost extrapolates out, right? Um, it's a needed thing because you need to have enough customer intimacy to know like here's likely what people are asking, and there's different sources you can kind of get to understand that, right? Like you can you know do work with your customers to understand how they found you and what kind of problems they solve. We take a very business problem approach to the way we market and the way we sell, and so like we kind of understand what business problems are being asked for, and so we can kind of reverse engineer our way into that. So is that overkill? 100% no. That I believe is truly part of what you're going to need to be data driven. Now, whether or not you need 90 pieces of content, that's the question, right?
Mm.
You likely can develop content that addresses multiple of these questions or multiple of these in one piece, right? It is possible to do that, and I don't think you'll be penalized by the generative AI engines, right, to do that. We take it a step further maybe because we have invested in the tools, right, for tracking these things,
Hmm.
which I think some have, some haven't, right? And like one of the things we saw early, and this was maybe right after Google turned on like the true AI functionality, which was December of 24, because I think a lot of companies showed up after the holidays and it was like, hey, what happened to my traffic, right? And what had happened was is Google turned this on, and so a lot of people in the first part of the year were scrambling a bit to say, all right, what do we do from here? We have the tools to be able to measure it, so we can understand how well are we serving up optionality for these things, right? And then how well our named competition is as well. So by understanding, it's like, look, in this case, in Perplexity, we're actually really scoring well. Like we're showing up in Perplexity's answers. We aren't showing up in ChatGPT's, and we're showing up in the answer versus having a citation, like understanding the difference between I'm in an answer versus I'm in a citation.
Hmm.
Like you really need to get into the nuance. And then that again drives the prioritization of what content do I work on next? What content, do I need, can I combine things on? Do I need to change the way that I've set up the site a bit to better suit these engines? All those things were the case. And the last thing I'll just say on that, I think it's evolving somewhat back to the point on like right after Google turned this on, we were actually seeing like if we tried to pull a lever on traditional SEO, we felt like we were being penalized on AI SEO
Hmm.
and vice versa. When we were trying to tune in for the citations, we almost lost a little bit of ground on the keyword piece.
Hmm.
I think it's getting more in tune now. As we've looked at it over the last few months. But that was one thing we had to reckon with, I think, throughout February and March was, man, it feels like two steps forward, one step back in a lot of cases where we're really trying to hone this in. So
Yeah.
it's a lot to think about for sure, David. And having good partners is always a good first step.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's strategy. It's then you got execution and you got data insights, and that's going to inform and revise your strategy. I want to ask you about customer insights and all this because this is a big piece of your
Mhm.
background and your experience. Um, because you can create these, these questions or these content pieces in a vacuum or by doing research? What's the role of original research and developing customer insights in developing these kind of content plans? How do you think about it?
Well, I mean, we're tuned in to a lot of sources of customer insight, just based on the company we're in. So I mean, whether it's understanding at a very high, at a very entry level of like, look, how did you find us, right? What's the marketing attribution? What was the channel that was successfully driving this lead, this, and more importantly, this SQL? We tend to think of everything in terms of revenue. Like I really don't care about MQLs as much as I care about SQOs, right?
Mhm.
And so, to that end, looking at that and saying, all right, was this effective? Looking at engagement, right? Are you downloading content that is valuable, that we know is valuable throughout the buying journey? And then what's happening after you download that? Are you disappearing? Are you still coming back? Is there a way that we can reach out to you and see if a message responds? The great thing is, since we've kind of did our rebrand in 23, the team was very small then, and we've been able to add a few resources so we can do a lot more test and learn on the marketing pieces. So whether that's even, hey, does this marketing email resonate more coming from us as a company or as a person? We found different messages resonate differently. So those are certainly marketing led insights for prospects and customers. But then there's all the other places of data you can get a close loss analysis. Hey, we felt like this was a really strong lead. It ended up getting into the buying process, ended up dying out. What happened here? Why did we lose this one? Was it to a competitor? Was it to, inertia, right? Was it to economic uncertainty? And then work that back into the messaging and work that back into the content to say, hey, look, we see a lot of people kind of gumming up in this part of the buying journey. We should really have content mid funnel that addresses this. um so yeah, I mean, those elements of kind of looking at all the aspects of what you understand to be the journey and that, and tying that back to the strategy, tying that back to the content that you produce, like those are just extremely important. And so I mean, uh it's not it's sometimes very easy to get caught up as marketers in, I love this story, or I'm working on this thing and it's taking a while to create. But you have to be willing to say, look, it might have been this way 3 months ago, but it maybe has changed because of a market force or anything. We have to constantly kind of revisit it. So we put some pretty strong uh guardrails on ourselves to say, is this going to resonate? Do we have the right people? Or is it breaking through? And if it's not, we need to change it. We need to try something else.
So you're looking at the data at a very detailed level. You're looking at, customer insights. You're not just thinking about third-party data.
No, no.
You're looking at, your data, your experience with individual customers and how that's all resonating with them.
Yeah.
I'm almost afraid to ask you this question about the content about kind of the buyer's journey, but do you think buyers consume our content across the buyer's journey in the way that we think they do? Like early stage, mid stage, position, or do you think buyers just kind of consume it randomly wherever wherever they are at the time? And how do you kind of think about that as a strategy?
Yeah. I mean, I think we can get like every ultimately the ultimate marketing pieces are how do you get stuff that's one to one, right? So
Hmm.
it's like for that particular company or prospect, how do you create something that's unique to them? And we do, I think, have some ways to do that here through our moving from the marketing into the sales process, right? It's really about, are we understanding what the business problem is, and then are we offering a prospect a unique take on how
Hmm.
we solve that business problem? And then, to be honest, a sign of value to what we're bringing them,
Hmm.
right? Like for a lot of folks who are selling into champions, right? Like they may not have the ultimate approval to spend that money. And we're seeing over and over again that, especially for software as a service that has AI components, a lot of that budgetary overview has shifted from the department to the IT leader or that, right? Because
Hmm.
there's this kind of like, oh, it's AI, IT has to approve everything. So you do need to provide your champion with something very powerful to be able to do that. So the buyers throughout the journey are going to, I think, be gravitating towards things that solve their unique problem that they have. So being able to do that kind of is important. That said, like there's always going to be things that buyers want to see, right? They're going to want to see your case studies, right, that resonate with them. They're going to want to understand, the lift for implementation. They're going to want to understand the, integrations that you can provide. And so I think there is evergreen content that you can put out there that's going to be helpful pricing, right? That's going to be helpful across the buyer's journey. Um, and then have the ability to hone that in on a very specific company and business problem when needed. But yeah, it's to your point, David, it's not like it's not programmatic in the sense of I know every customer is going to consume this, then this, then this, then this.
Yeah, interesting. So I'm kind of reminded of a quote from Jeff Bezos. He talked in his very famous quote. I'm sure you've seen it. He talks about people ask him often, what do you think is going to change in the next 5 years? And he says, I'm often focused on what's not going to change. I want our team to focus on what's not going to change, which is
Mm-hmm.
people want lower prices, faster delivery, more value, right? So higher quality, right? So, and maybe it's the same in content. It remind me of what you just said. People always want to know pricing. They want to know how you stack up versus competitors. They want to know case studies. What's it cost to implement all that core stuff? And then you got to answer all the other questions
Yeah.
in content as well. We just have a few minutes left, and I just want to talk about your experience in content marketing and kind of owning that and revving up uh, results through SEO and through inbound leads versus advertising, because you can do a lot of the same things without all this effort, right? So you could just drive a lot of results through advertising and through paid search. Is it an easy either or? Is there one or the
No,
other? How do you kind of think about it strategically as a CMO?
yeah, I mean, look, I've had the benefit of working at some pretty big brands, right? And think about my time at Walmart when I was partnered with the SVP of advertising. We were working on some really big things for the Walmart brand. I mean, Walmart had $1 billion budget for ads, right? So it's like that you're going to drive that for a consumer brand, right? Even on the B2B side, there's elements of advertising I think that can be really effective when it comes down to the decision I make. It's what is the more likely way to drive someone who's going to produce revenue. So I am complete like I take a certain agnosticism to the best channel wins, right? I actually don't think it's easier to do ads when you look at the results. Uh, we cut our Google Ads budget from when I started to now by a tenfold multiplier, right? And which is crazy because what we realized was, again, we were driving a lot of activity that wasn't leading necessarily to revenue producing opportunities. And so, being able to redeploy those funds, and even to be honest, like we brought the cost to serve down so significantly. I mean, we cut our cost per SQO by 100 200%
Mm.
basically by changing that strategy. Now, from a content marketing side, you need to have the right people in the right roles. I mean, I'm a pretty good writer. I've got a pretty good eye for messaging. I've got fantastic resources on my team who are great at that. We've got great partners who help us in some of those ways too. So, it doesn't make it easier, but the outcome has been better. So I'm going to weigh to that. Um, we use the content we produce kind of as part of the advertising. So you can look at it from a PR perspective and say, do you count paid media as in PR as advertising? Kind of, right?
Mhm.
And I don't get too worried about like this channel, that channel, and trying to figure out everything. It's just what's work. I mean, it comes down to if it's driving revenue, we figure out ways to double down on it. And if it's not, we figure out why. And so, we've had some success advertising, right? Like we're on the LinkedIn side seems to be the channel of choice right now. I would say we're spending more on LinkedIn today than we are on Google Ads, and it's because it pays back in the metrics that we want. That may change, right? That may change, and the great thing is we have the data and we're constantly looking at it to know, all right, if it's time to change tactics, we change tactics. And
Yeah.
I don't mean to oversimplify it. It's a lot of in the weeds as we've talked about, but you really do have to have your hand on the steering wheel the whole time now. There's no set it and forget it for certain.
Yeah, well, you clearly have your hand on the steering wheel. You've done a great job there. Thank you for taking the time to
Hey,
share
my
your
pleasure.
strategies, the effort that you put in. It's clearly working for you from a results perspective. If people want to connect with you and learn more about your experience with content marketing and what you've done there, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, I mean, certainly reach out on LinkedIn. I'm not hard to find. You can also, look on Bloomfire, see what you see on there, and see if there's things that interest, and reach out through there. But the easiest way is probably for me directly. Go to LinkedIn and send me a note and tell me what's up.
Great. Dan, thanks for taking the time. It's a great conversation.
David, my pleasure, and I'll wish you and your team all the success.